Welcome to A State of Mind. This is Julian Royce.
I apologize for the wind noise you may be hearing. I am recording this right here on the beach in Tulum, Mexico. Really grateful and happy to be here. And I've gotten to spend the last few days here on a yoga and meditation retreat with Christopher Wallace of the Tantrika Institute. And just briefly, he's the author of a couple books that I would highly recommend. One is Tantra Illuminated, and the other is The Recognition Sutras. And I'll link those in the show notes below, but Tantra Illuminated especially is such a good overview of the meditative and yogic traditions of India. So anyone interested in that subject, well worth your time. Today on the podcast, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Amber Ryan. Amber is a movement and dance and embodiment teacher, and this is her second time on the podcast. It was really great to speak with her and hear how she's been doing since the pandemic happened. She's now offering a lot online, so you can join her from anywhere in the world, which I would highly recommend as well. And interestingly, on the subject of ecstatic dance, we actually had ecstatic dance one night here on this yoga retreat. And Harish gave such a beautiful introduction to it. He said he was going to quote an American sutra by George Clinton, which goes, "Free your mind and your ass will follow." And so, it's humorous, but it's also profound, because if we discover more freedom in our mind and freedom from our mind, freedom from our habitual concepts and stories and thoughts, then from that space we can discover more freedom in our body and freedom of movement. And it can actually be a really profound practice to allow the natural, spontaneous movements and expressions of our body, also of our voice, and also of our thoughts, to just allow them, to let them be what they are, to let them come and let them go. And so I'm not saying, for anyone listening that you should do ecstatic dance or you should do this or that, but I would encourage you to find some way to let it move through you, whatever it is for you. And ecstatic dance or other somatic practices, as we've discussed on this podcast, are so helpful in helping us to untangle and release the emotions and concepts and stories that we tend to tie ourselves up in. And you all know what I'm talking about, the kind of thought loops, the habitual patterns in our minds, the stories that we tell ourselves, to find a way to let those go and open up to a bigger space. And so I'm very happy to share with you Amber Ryan again. She's a wonderful teacher, and without further ado, I bring you Amber Ryan. Today with Amber Ryan. Amber, thank you for being on the podcast and returning.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to talk about what's going on in the world and to tune in this way. Mm-hmm.
We were just saying how much things have changed since we last spoke, which was, I think, 2019.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
The fall of 2019. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so 2020 came around, and the whole world did change. So now we're in a different place in humanity, and how it is that we're navigating the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's been a journey, obviously, but it seems like you've been navigating it well, like making adjustments and changes, moving more online. That was part of what we were talking about.
Yes, well, in the dance world, so I am a dancer from a long time. There's a jazz move called the pivot turn.
Nice, yeah.
And so that's what it feels like we've all been having to do in order to find ways to survive and to continue to do our art or whatever it is our offering is in the world. It's been a constant listening, education, and how can I pivot to be with this present moment and the challenges that are emerging now. And so, the 360 Emergence has definitely done that over the past almost 2 years now. Really, almost 2 years. One of the first things is that we knew that we wanted to begin to offer what it is that we do, which is movement, a movement practice, a community movement practice. We wanted to go online with that, and it was actually in our calendar.
We were already planning that.
We were already planning it. I'd already done a few events where I was part of being, with Ester Perel or Eileen, where I had already been online in Zoom teaching. So I had the model for how it could work and somewhat of the technology on how it could work. And in our calendar, it said March, what was that, 2020, March 2020, the 360 goes online. And so it was right there. And the beauty of it is sometimes as artists, we get a little perfectionistic about things. And so moving into a place of need with this helped us to bypass that artistic perfectionism and allowed us to just jump right in, to just dive right in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a push.
It was a push. It was a push. It was an ignition, because I imagine we would have hemmed and hawed and how to do it this way and that way for the next 6 months or so. So it was really an ignition for us. And it was a big challenge, because part of what we do, we're utilizing music as well as a tool to support someone's movement or their somatic journey. And so the technology that we've had to learn in order to be able to do what we do is, one, it was a challenge, and it continues to be. So, yeah.
Well, I'm impressed. Like, I get your emails and I see all the Zoom offerings or online offerings, and I wasn't sure that it would work with dance.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it does. Like, you can dance in your own space, have a sense of community. It's not the same, obviously.
Yeah. Well, there's pluses and minuses to most things, right? So one of the pluses is that we have a global community. So people in Australia are able to practice with us. People in Italy, Poland, wherever they are, are able to come online. And we also record these things. So if someone's sleeping at that time, they can view a playback. But bringing the global community together has been a really positive aspect of it. And it is a big curiosity. I think, like any unknowns, you can't know until you do it. And certainly there are certain aspects of our practice, because it's so movement oriented and interactive, that it has shifted a little bit. So we've had to find, through Zoom, how can we create that sense of community and interaction through this technology that we have, right? Yeah. It's not the same as being in person, but there's a lot of positives about it as well.
It seems like a good way to think about it and talk about it. There's pluses and minuses. It's not the same.
Right.
There is like an ability, at least, to feel connected with people across the world. That's more than just hearing their voice. Like, it's energetic feeling of, and
absolutely,
that's interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Absolutely. And because we have been an international global community for a while, some people are getting to dance with each other that already know each other from different parts of the world, and make that reconnection. Or we now, because we are both in person and online, we have it work in the opposite order too. Someone that's only danced with each other online, when you come to meet someone in person in the flesh, it's like, oh, I had no idea you were that tall. I had no idea that, whatever the observation is, there's this excitement of like, oh, that's who you are. I've only seen you from the neck up, or,
That's
so
cool to hear.
Fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun in that way too.
Well, I guess while we're on the topic, what do you see as the advantages to being in person?
Oh, well, one way to look at what it is that we do is a movement meditation, let's say. So with meditation, part of what you're working with in the movement realm is spatial awareness. So if you're in your room with yourself, there's no other physical body to practice that spatial awareness with. When you're in a room full of people, there is, right? Yeah. So one thing that I noticed after months and months and months of not being in a room with folks, and then going and being in a room as well, is that there's a way that your energy gets kicked up, and you actually use more of your energy because of the excitement that's going on in the room.
Right, you feed off of it.
Exactly. So it's very dynamic in that way. Yeah. In your own space, you have to discipline yourself more, if you will. Some people don't like that word, but let's just use it for a moment. To stay present, to not get distracted, because I could be right here and go like, oh, I need to put that thing up and I need to do that. And so instead of having a devoted practice like you do when you go to a venue, a space to practice together. You're walking in, your cell phone isn't there, your computer isn't there, your kitchen isn't there, all of your to-do lists, you're leaving it at the door, right? So in order to get the same benefit, there usually needs to be a different kind of commitment to keep yourself present and engaged for that period of time, whether it be an hour or 4 hours. Right. Because we do classes online, labs online that last an hour, but we've also done 4-day immersions.
Online?
Online,
wow.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. So we've actually been able to offer, the 360 Emergence is still relatively new. We're about to have our 3rd birthday. Right. So we're very new in that way, even though we've been doing Kate and I have been doing what we've been doing for 20 plus years each. But to, have an opportunity to develop, let's say, what our core curriculum is and to offer that online first. I mean, we never would have thought to do it that way. Yeah. So, all of our core curriculums in the 360 have emerged online first before in person.
Interesting.
And it's just because of, how old we are.
Well, no, I appreciate what you're saying about the discipline and the intention. And there's been so many online courses offered and trainings and like whole conferences. Yeah. And so I've noticed myself, I have a tendency to just want to do everything. Like, so I want to sign up for everything, and I have to not do that. And then, but if I do sign up for a course, to like really show up for it and have that discipline.
Absolutely.
But it's a choice. It's more of a choice with it. You could do half of it maybe, or you could just do part of it.
Oh my goodness. I mean, at first when this happened, everybody was like the kid in the candy shop, because now I have access to my teachers that are all over the place that I used to have to go travel to. Now I can take a different class with a different teacher every single day in movement meditation or ecstatic dance, however it is that you frame that. People were reporting to me that they were doing like 12, 13 classes a week to begin with. And of course, that has an expiration date to it, right? It's
not sustainable, yeah.
It's not sustainable, right? Because now we're more integrated in this type of world. So, we're engaging in person in other ways as well. So it's refinding balance, right? A balance that works for us. And, like you said, I want to choose the things consciously with awareness that I'm going to engage into, and choose to step into. So that, it brings more balance and more attention when I step in, as opposed to the distraction that's possible.
Yeah. So for me, I definitely have a value on in person, and I feel like more connected with people, and I want that. But you can feel that way online too. It's an interesting world we're in.
Absolutely.
It seems like COVID like pushed us all into this weird direction, but maybe it's there's just more options on the menu. Yeah. More ways to stay in touch, more connections, so many more people.
Yeah.
But
maybe. Mm-hmm. For me personally, I do both now. As a facilitator, as a leader, I'm in a place where having both online offerings and in person is really important to me, because one, I live with myself. I live alone. And so that, as opposed to certain people that might be living with a whole family, like there's a certain need that I have as a human being for connection. Totally. Right. And we're all having to navigate that for ourselves. I know many introverts have been like, yay, we get a couple of years off, from having to engage in the world so much. And so for each of us, it's finding that unique balance, and a few times I did feel that I tipped over into the realm of isolation. And I think we have to really pay attention to that, because, when we become isolated, so many things can set in: depression, loneliness, all of that really weighs us down, and we can arrive into a state of hopelessness. So we're all navigating this in our own way. How much in-person time do I need and require in order to thrive and keep, engaging as a human being on the planet in this time? It's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. I think it requires some maybe more maturity, more development to see yourself and what you need, and kind of, because it's, we can kind of create our own worlds more and more, I feel like. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there's less, I think the isolation piece, some people I've talked to, and I feel this myself sometimes, it's like the default mode of our society tends towards isolation, individualism, kind of everyone doing their own thing. And so it takes some effort to create community for a lot of people, maybe not everyone, but whereas in a lot of societies or in the past, I think community was more taken for granted.
you were in a village and everyone knew each other. You didn't have to put a lot of effort into, creating that for yourself.
Right.
So there's like a plus and minus. There's more built in.
Yeah. And that's, part of what we're in the process of understanding for ourselves. Like, one, how important community is. I think one of the gifts of COVID has been to help us turn our attention to the importance of local community. Because so many of us, not everyone, but a lot of people, a lot of folks got into the place, well, my community is all over the globe, and I go to this place and I go to that place. And when we look at the non-sustainability of everyone traveling in airplanes, all the time, we can see the importance of this shift into local community as well. So I think that is one of the positive benefits that has come through, is the emphasis on the local community.
Yeah, it's a both and. Like, it's expanded the global community. Hopefully we're becoming more aware of the need for local community to build that.
Yeah, we're doing that in Boulder. I mean, we have
I'm
wonderful.
I'm gonna be there tonight.
Yeah, we have an offering tonight at StarHouse, one of my favorite places to offer movements. StarHouse is really one of the main things that brought me here to the area.
Oh, cool.
The temple itself really just magnetized me to this area. And,
do you want to describe that a little bit for people?
Yeah, well, one of the ways that I interact with the world or receive intuition, we could say, is through hearing, you can call it clairaudience, if you will. And so every main place that I've moved to as an adult, I've started to get messages about that place before I ever visited. So that happened to me in Costa Rica. All of a sudden, everywhere I turned was like, Costa Rica. I'm like, okay, what's up with Costa Rica? Let's go check this out. And the same thing started to happen when I lived in Costa Rica about Boulder. And I had a few students that would come and do our deeper immersions and retreats in Costa Rica. I knew they lived in this place called Boulder that, people loved so much. And then I started to hear about the StarHouse. I was like, StarHouse. I think you need to teach at the StarHouse. These types of things started to come through. I was like, okay, I'm listening. So about 5 years ago was the first time that I came to Boulder, to the area. And during that trip was magically invited to go to the StarHouse. And it's a place that is so highly attuned energetically. Like every day there are people that meditate in or on that space to help keep the energetics, the metaphysical energetics of the space really high vibration. And so when me and my partner at the time walked into the StarHouse, wild things started happening. It started to speak to us immediately. So the StarHouse is also built on the astrological grid. And so when you look at it in that way, each log that's in there is intentionally set, and it's set to the stars. So you have the Taurus pole, you have the Gemini pole. And so there was a moment when we were being kind of placed by Leela and David, who are the creators and the steward, David Tressimer, of that amazing creation. We were being placed in our positions, if you will, in the StarHouse, and out of nowhere, a candle just leapt out of its placeholder and into the middle of the room. And it's things like that. You're like, okay, I'm paying attention. What do I need to listen? What do I need to wake up to here? So things like that. And my whole first encounter with Boulder felt very much that way. It felt like everything was just a yes. It was yes. Yeah. My partner at the time did not have the same experience, but I did. And so, that's the way that I tend to follow.
But this listening.
Yeah, there's definitely a listening that I really developed that tool in Costa Rica, living on the land and communing with the elements over a period of time. I really learned to open that part of my being. Yeah. It comes in handy. It comes in handy.
Totally. The StarHouse is such a good example of the physical place being so magical, like you're saying, so important. Like, you're not going to get that on Zoom.
No.
So
Yeah.
it's good to like. I think a lot of the Zoom online world has helped me appreciate places like that all the more.
Oh, absolutely.
There's some. It's so special, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This past year also another thing that happened, and this has happened to a lot of places. Some magical places have not been able to financially support themselves during COVID and
Right.
have closed or changed ownership or are on pause. And one of the places that I've done, I think 40 something retreats at in Costa Rica, they'd wanted to sell this place forever, and this place really became a home to me. They ended up changing ownership, and with that change of ownership, changing intention. So this past summer, we learned that they were changing ownership in a matter of 6 weeks. So crazy me, I'm like, well, then let's go do a final retreat, and we just really swiftly put a whole retreat together so that we could go and honor this land that so many people in our community have had healings and transformations and life-changing moments and deep prayers. So we went in this summer to properly say goodbye.
Oh, wow.
And that's the thing, showing up to a physical place as a community to do our deep, soulful work of transformation, healing, whatever that is for us in different parts of our lives. The place ends up also holding part of that energy. Yeah. So in that, when we're on Zoom, we're in our own homes, which is really beautiful because we're creating that type of energy within our own sanctuaries.
Sure.
So there's that, right? But it's not. I mean, it's a replacement because it's been a need, right? But to go to a location together as a community and learn together, co-create together, weave together, have meals together. We can't. There's no replacement for that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're about to do that for the first time. In January, Kate Shela and I, my co-creator in the 360, we will actually together go to offer a retreat in Costa Rica at a new location.
Oh, cool.
So this is the first time that we're going to be offering, and it's the body work is called alchemy. So there's going to be a lot of beautiful embodied practical magic, and the land is very different. It's a whole different part of the country than what we're used to being in. So it's going to be a brand new thing for us and our community and the community that comes together.
Yeah. It's exciting. So
It
it's
is.
in January in Costa Rica.
It is. They're planning right now is one of the most wild, irrational kind of things that we're actually doing these days. But January, we almost have a completely full house, and one of the things that we love to do is offer in circular places. Our body work is called the 360.
Right.
So the place where our work was actually born out of was in Costa Rica on a circular floor, which was at the Costa Rica Yoga Spa. And this one also is as well. And StarHouse is as well. Right?
Beautiful. Yeah.
We love to offer in the round, if you will.
So to be in a circular space as a part of that.
Yeah. There's something really magical about a circular space, and I have to say I absolutely prefer it.
Cool. Yeah. And it's unusual to find, right? Our culture is so square and
I
rectangle
know.
inside places.
I know. I think it is. But I definitely see them. I think in a lot of places in Central South America, there are more circular places. I think places that really work consciously with nature, a lot of them are more circular.
I've heard some Tibetan lamas or teachers talk about, like, in the nomadic culture there, they often lived in big tents that would be circular, and they would have like different parts of the tent set up for different purposes, but it was all just one big space, really. And so whole families would be, sleeping in the same room, kind of. Maybe they'd have a little corner for meditation or a place to cook or a fire in the center. But they were talking about how in the West we're so compartmentalized. We're so good at putting everything in boxes. Right. Here's the kitchen. Here's the dining room. Here's the bathroom. Here's the bedroom. And there, it's not like a good or bad thing, but it's like we kind of lose sense of this all being connected, all being in one space together.
Yeah, and it's interesting hearing you say that, because when I look at the home that chose me and I chose it, there's so much open space.
Nice.
So just seeing what our individual preferences are, if we're lucky enough to have preferences in that way, as far as what my space is going to look like, what it's going to feel like, spaciousness is something that's important to me.
Me too. Yeah, that's good. Good quality now. I think that's become more common. More open plans.
We live in Colorado. Let's just look out the window and see that extraordinary spaciousness. Yeah.
So do you want to share a little bit more about the 360 and what about it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's such a big topic. It's, when you're tuning into let's say a practice that has some mystery, it's challenging to define what that mystery is.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So there's so much that is, I would say, non-linear about what it is we do, because one, we are really working in the circular pattern, concentric circles. I mean, one way that we can look at the paradigm shift that we're in right now is from the pyramid to the circle. Wow, right? And empowering the circle. Like, one thing that's really important to Kate Shela and I is that, let's say, our students, if you will, or those that choose to come in and participate, our main goal, if there is one, is for each person in the community to feel and to become empowered.
Wow, right? I love that.
Yeah, because, in a community, when each person is empowered to be who they are as unique individuals, the whole community is more powerful because of that.
Absolutely.
And so, the form that we use is embodiment. The form that we use is movement, is dance. You could even say is conscious dance or ecstatic dance, which those terms are now rippling out into the culture more than they used to. Yeah. So it's not fully mainstream. Some people have heard of it, some people haven't.
Right.
Certainly people that are more in our circles have heard of ecstatic dance and conscious dance. Kate and I both studied with the late, great Gabrielle Roth. Okay. And she was our root teacher. And I would say the 5 rhythms is very much a root practice for us. Beautiful. But, a lot of time, Gabrielle passed on and the world keeps evolving. And so, one thing that's been important to us is like, okay, well, here's these people that keep showing up to everything that we're doing. And we're doing it in a way that feels really resonant to us. So the empowerment of the community, the emphasis on community, and I hesitate to use the word, because we're always looking for new language. Yeah. I hesitate to use the word lifestyle, but there's something in the way of, so for the 360, it is about dance, it is about movement, but it's about so much more. Yeah. We use sitting meditation. I now teach Yoga Nidra. We bring in guest teachers, guest experts from different fields. So it's like, what's happening in our world today? Last year when, so much erupted with the murder of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and shifting to center more Black people, brown people, when we started to make that shift, it's like, okay, now our community needs an education too. So who are the experts that we can bring in to help educate us as human beings? So the 360 is also an education, and us staying current and present to what's going on, emerging in the world, is really important to us. So sometimes we might turn our attention towards emotions or feelings or sexuality and gender. But the ground common denominator in what weaves it all together is movement, is the music, is, the catalytic artistry, the transformation that comes through by utilizing music and movement. Right. That's the ground pillar. And then we have these other pillars that we pay attention to: social justice, leadership, things like that are really important to, like, if we use the phrase like 360 human, what is a 360 human? Right? If 360 human isn't just like, okay, this is the path, this is it, and then there's blinders on to everything else that's going on in the world. I think sometimes the pitfall of, let's say, meditators, yogis, people that, claim to be conscious, is that the threshold of acceptance can become really narrow. And we don't want to do that. We want to be able to have the difficult conversations and have the skill set to be able to do that. Right? So for us, it is very much about the body. But if I have this incredible embodiment, but I don't know how to speak or articulate or how to connect what's going on, let's say, in my heart, to be able to clearly express that, then I'm not yet in the fullness of my being. And so these things that we can practice together in community in a safe, supportive way.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the idea of empowered community where everyone is empowered, and the movement, dance, coming into our body, music, it makes sense to me as a way to be together, that where we're kind of putting the talking and the thinking a little bit to the side, at least the talking. Yeah. Like, say you have conflict with someone, and like you're in like a thought loop with that, and every time you think about it, you just get more angry, or you feel more righteous, or whatever it is, or they seem more wrong. To be able to like move together and just have that on the side, I think can be so powerful and healing, because get us out of our whatever we're fixated on, whatever we're stuck on.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's nothing that's been more polarizing in our world than the conversation of vaccine versus non-vaccinated.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's a topic I've avoided thus far in the podcast for the most part. But I started.
Wise man.
The last few episodes I've recorded, some of them haven't even been released yet, but started to talk more about it, and that is the number one most divisive issue in my communities that I know, especially around Boulder, to the point where, and this is extreme example, but it's true, so I'm going to share it because it kind of blows my mind, and I'm not sure what to do with it. But I have a friend. I don't know if we're still friends exactly, but someone I know who's a leader, and they create these beautiful events that involve ecstatic dance and DJs and tarot readings and Norse mythology and all this stuff, and they bring people together, and they've, credit to them, they've created a really cool thing. But they sent me a message. It was literally like a week ago. They're like, they're doing this big upcoming event with like multiple artists and DJs, and they're running this big space. And he sent me a message. He's like, "I'm sorry you can't come to our next meeting. I'm not going to name it, but we've decided to not let people who are vaccinated come." And I was just like, what? And I didn't respond, because I got vaccinated. But I support people's freedom to choose whether they want it or not. But it's just the perfect example of how divisive this issue is.
It is it's so divisive. And as someone that basically, part of what I do is I listen to it all, and I aim to find the center. I aim to find the middle way. But it's been wild to see, even within our own community, let's say, or the communities that you feel would be, so freedom-based, how polarized it is, right? Between like only vaccine, not vaccine. Yeah, I've also heard of people saying like they won't date people that are vaccinated. This whole thing.
Or they don't want to hang out with them, or
Right. Yeah. So it's extremely divisive. We've had to make some very challenging decisions because in the 360, and right now the StarHouse is mixed vaccination. You can choose our event there. You can choose, and it doesn't matter which way you go. You're gonna hear the opposite side is gonna message. Well, da 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 da. So it's just I'm learning to listen, to take it in, and to develop a healthy kind of detachment from it, because there's a part of me that says, you're free to do with your body what you want to do. I'm free to do with my body what feels good to me. And then what is the collective responsibility? So how, as a movement leader, where we're sweating and breathing all over each other,
it's a little more,
and we're inside, not outside, how do I, as a leader, make the most responsible choice that I can? And I've gone all over the map with it. I've done all scenarios, from mixed vax to, okay, now, because some people only feel comfortable this way, we're also going to offer this small event for only vax. And then, so I've been trying
But then
it
you have
all out.
the mask thing on top of that too. That's another.
Oh, and then there's the mask thing, and so there's so much that we don't know, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much that we don't know, and I think 2 years in, there's a lot of impatience. But part of what I pay attention to is whenever any of us, about vaccine or not vaccine, whenever we get into the place of this is the way, like I know there's my system, because of my practice of being fluid and my system itself reacts to a strong stake in the ground saying that this is the way it is, because regardless, we don't really know.
Oh, no.
We don't really know.
It seems like it's true, a solid statement. We don't really know.
We
no one really knows.
We don't really know.
We all witness the leaders not really knowing anything.
Right, exactly.
As much as they, I think, hopefully were mostly well-intentioned, they didn't really know.
Right. And I think, part of the other difference, the nuance that we're working with here, so to speak, is there are those folks who have had very up close and personal experience with loss of people dying from COVID, and there's people that still haven't.
Right.
That it's just not like they've been the lucky ones, so to speak. And I've seen and heard all different kinds of scenarios. Yeah. So in aiming to hold safe space in a movement practice. I will just say it's been an exploration, and I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do know that listening is a really important thing for all of us. And for myself, when I feel that this is the way it is, my system responds to that a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's important. I think it's important to listen to that and give people the benefit of the doubt. And there are people who have serious medical issues that prevent them from getting vaccinated. That's fine. And then I've gotten to a point where, I'm just going to respect people's choices and not pry. Yeah. But it's been a tough one.
And then we have country mandates. So that's where it gets really tricky for international travel. So the 360 is an international community. Yeah. So whenever we hold something in person, not locally, but like Costa Rica, we have people coming from all over the world. And then you have countries, like if someone from Costa Rica wanted to come here right now, and they weren't a citizen and were not vaccinated, they couldn't get in.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So countries have their own mandates that are, and who knows where that's heading over the next few months with the variant. So anyways, there's that. We did it. We talked about it a little bit.
We can stop talking.
We talked about the taboo. The challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So if anyone's really riled up right now, let's all take a breath in together. Let it out. Move the body. Shake it around. Yeah.
But you found a way to keep the community together, to grow it despite all these challenges.
Oh yeah.
So that's
one point maybe to wrap this up, which is really fascinating, is there was a moment when I had, let's say, a town meeting. I had it on Zoom because I was exposed to COVID and I had to cancel one of the StarHouses because I was exposed. So we had a town meeting that week instead. And in the town meeting, different people obviously shared their voices and shared their point of view. Mm-hmm. And we are a community here in Boulder that has a very different, varied, viewpoint on vaccinated, not vaccinated, all of that. And so what ended up happening is everyone listened to each other in the meeting, and then we got off, and then the next day I got a message from someone saying, like, I was really triggered by so-and-so share and da-da-da-da-da, so now I don't know if I can come. I don't know if I can come and be part of this community because their view was so different than mine. And so what that really helped me to remember and to help turn it into a teaching, especially about the dance practice, the movement practice, is that I'm not showing up because I'm friends with you, you and you. It happens to be that I am friends with a few people that come in to do the thing, but I'm here actually for the medicine of the dance. And so what you were talking about a little while ago is like the dance is a place where I can come in and without word express all of this
Yeah.
angst and frustration and tension and be able to do it right there. And that person that became my enemy or my foe or my opposition yesterday, I can utilize that energy, right? We could even like work it out together without word, right? And so it's that place where, you know, we can be a community. Doesn't mean that we're all close friends, but that we're coming together to dive into this, whatever, this practice in this case, that brings so much to our lives. So it's not necessarily, you know, friendships do form, but that's not the purpose of the container. The purpose is to come in and work stuff out and through the body and become congruent with the way that my body feels, my heart feels, my mind. So it's all aligned, right? It doesn't mean I gotta like be your best friend.
Right. No, I love that. I think that's a great thing to share. It's like, to me, a mature community that is coming together for a bigger purpose, where you actually don't have to be friends with everyone, and that's totally okay.
Yeah.
You can actually disagree with someone, and you can still be in the same space. And I think that's a great invitation to put out, that people could hear this and consider, I can expand my sense of community. I can show up even if I hate someone or I'm angry at them. Or you still show up. And that being said, like, we have the choice in today's world to really cut people off, I think, in ways that maybe in the past we couldn't do as easily. And we can put up boundaries, and it's good to have that as a choice, but I think some people overdo that, and then they're isolating themselves, they're creating more division. I want to put out, an invitation to come together more, basically. Even if we disagree about things, or even if you're angry at someone. I think that's the kind of community I want to be a part of and have in my life, because I want people to do that for me too. You know, if someone's angry at me, I'd rather, usually I think, like, talk to them or hear about it, or you know.
Work it out.
Work it out somehow.
Work it out, you know? Absolutely. And then there's just certain things that we just have to agree to disagree about, right?
Yeah. Phew. Well, maybe we'll leave the vaccine behind for now. I feel like there's a million things you can say about it, but how would you, let me see, one of my questions I was going to answer is, how would you define or talk about ecstatic dance? Because I've had people, it's been on the podcast a few times, and I'm surprised a little bit when someone will message me like, oh, I never heard of ecstatic dance before, and maybe they live in, I don't know, like South Carolina or something, and they don't have that in their area so easily. But it's been cool to, like, for people to hear about that through the podcast.
Well, so many things. So how do we simplify this answer?
So many things.
Well, ecstatic dance originated thousands and thousands of years ago. The Bacchae were coming together to, you know, maybe drink of some wine and stand around the fire and, you know, honor the, you know, the gods of the dance. And so this type of ritual was really prevalent a long time ago. And, and you know, in different cultures, there are different ways to achieve, let's say, or to arrive into an ecstatic state. So some cultures, you know, go into like a place where, you know, physically you look at and the body's shaking, and, you know, and then they get kind of transported. What is happening there, let's say, as a common denominator, is, and why it was shut down, is because ecstatic dance gives us direct relations with Source, with God.
Yeah, I love that.
With the universe, whatever you call that energy. You know, the preachers, the priests, they didn't want that because we're in the paradigm. They were in the paradigm of the pyramid, where I need you to need me and the authority of the church in order to access that place, right? So part of what we're doing is moving the body in a way, first of all, I would say in our way of doing it, of releasing tension from the body. So my teacher, Gabrielle Roth, she created, and a system came to her that helped create the shortcut for the Western world.
Beautiful.
So it was very much a tribal experience in different parts of the world, but the Western world did not have access to this because it was cut off put down,
Yeah.
and the witches were burned, all those types of things. It was put down.
I think that's an important part of the history of the Western world, that these ways of ecstasy were suppressed. They were made not okay, and I think we see it in some of the negative stereotypes about white people, like white people can't dance or something.
Right.
It's like that part of our culture was put down.
Right. Absolutely.
It's had a huge impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we tune into nature is rhythm.
Right.
Right? Yeah. And so what Gabrielle did, and she was really exploring in the 60s at Esalen, she downloaded what one of her books was Maps to Ecstasy. So she gave the Western world, the white boy and the white girl, a physical somatic map to open the body, if you will, to relax the body of tension, to shift it from being so cerebral. How long as a culture have we been so cerebral, right? Increasingly so. So what this map to ecstasy did was teach us that through the body, we can open the channel, if you will, to direct communion with what? With nature, with the earth, with the air, with, all the elements. And for those that, tap into source or want to have, let's say, a conversation with God, it's all language.
Yeah.
This is a way. This is a way in. Yeah. And so what's happened since then is that seed has blossomed in so many different ways. And so now you actually have a modality that's called ecstatic dance, So what are the common denominators? The common denominators are, we're going to move.
Right.
We're going to have music to help us move and inspire us, right? We're going to come together as a community in some way in order to do that, right? Now, obviously, you can do that in your own room, but what it is that we create together energetically helps that transformation to happen.
Element of community,
Right? So that is what ecstatic dance is. Now then we could go in and define what ecstasy is. That's a whole other...
But another component of ecstatic dance usually is not talking.
Yes, so that's where the container comes in, and whoever's holding the space, right? Because certainly you can walk into containers that are not held well, where talking's happening, whispering's happening, so what's ecstatic dance, or there's another term for it also called conscious dance. And it's these are nuances, right? So conscious dance, we would say, might have more teaching in it, to where we can awaken consciousness, awaken awareness, right? So this is where some of the modalities have more teaching than others. Like if you go into what might be a typical ecstatic dance, there might be an opening circle that sets an intention and a closing one. But even in the middle, no one's guiding over the microphone to invite you into different ways of being. So this is where modalities get nuanced. So for me, I love movement meditation. And that is also slightly different. So what I'm doing in movement meditation is I'm paying attention, right? So meditation, attention, and awareness to different parts of my body to quiet the mind. And so as a facilitator, I've been teaching now for, I've been teaching pretty much my whole life, but I've been teaching in this modality for about 15 years or so. Yeah. And so, within that, there's all these nuances that come through. And so I can relatively quickly help someone unlock their body into that conversation with God.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of style, because some people don't want to be taught. They just want to go and be on the beach together and move together and listen to the music and be, swept into their ecstatic trance in that way. And other people want to do that, yet have segments of facilitation where collectively we're learning something together that then can be brought into a journey. And that's more my style. My style in facilitating usually, if it's a 2-hour session like we're going to have tonight, in the beginning, I know there's a bunch of new people coming tonight. So I already know that. So I want to create some anchors for us that as a community, we can all drop into that foundation together, so that once we start the journey aspect of it, where I guide a lot less, there are some pieces for those newcomers and some reminders for all of us that we can. So here's ecstatic dance. And, part of what comes through, one of the main aims is to bring not only each individual, but when it turns into collective ecstasy, then we have collectively entered into the unified field.
Beautiful.
And that can happen at a concert. That can, so music is such a grounding force for that.
Yeah, it really gets us vibrating at the same
Right.
frequency.
Exactly. And so when a whole room has been gelled or lifted, if you will, or transformed into an ecstatic state, if you were to take a step back and witness it, you witness a field of congruence right there.
Yeah, I love that word, congruence.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great description.
Yeah. So then, what is ecstasy? One very small definition, or maybe small is not the right word, but a definition of it is, it's like that place where we're feeling right there on the edge of pleasure and pain. And that relationship right there. Sometimes in ecstasy, you can see people with their face lit up in a smile and tears rolling down their face. Yeah. So it's like this merging of the human experience, and there's usually a state of awe or reverence or inspiration that's in there as well, you know. But it is not a place where I am sorting or figuring or planning, right?
That's a good point.
That has quieted down.
Okay, I'll be able to put that on hold for a minute.
Right.
Let it quiet down,
Right, and so for many folks, still, even today, one of the first thresholds to cross when you go into a space, and especially if it's your first time, it's like there is a threshold that we cross from self-consciousness to being more conscious of the whole. It's where I step out of like my own little small boxes and my nerves and all of that into relaxation and into a feeling of wholeness with my whole being. It's not just from the head up. It's the whole, whole thing.
It's back to that 360, the wholeness, the circle, the embodiment. Beautiful.
We just took a breath.
Like, whew. Just imagine that will give people a taste of what this work is about, because it's not so easy to define. It doesn't fit into categories that the everyday common sense, that we have in our language. Because it's something a little bit different. Because it's like, I like moving meditation, that it has a spiritual component if you want, bringing in the body, emotions. There's so much there. Yeah,
absolutely.
I like what you were saying before we started recording. So I was like, do you think of yourself as a spiritual teacher? And you said something about like, well, people can connect with that if they want, or like, what? Do you want to speak to that again?
Yeah, it's really good and safe for me to not self-identify as a spiritual teacher, because in this day and age, you get into that whole story, and oh my goodness, like the whole gamut. I'm a real human being with real challenges, and I've always had an affinity for both the light and the shadow, for gravitating towards spiritual teachings, towards aiming to understand the great mystery of the universe that we live within. For me, the foundation of my teaching is somatic, is physical. And so right now, I'm a huge fan of Young Pueblo, and I've just gotten his new book in, and it's amazing. It's one of those books that you open, and there might be 2 lines or 3 lines or a short stanza, but there's a teaching in there, right? So what I might do is, let's say for right now, what I'm practicing with is, I've already mentioned it, like detachment. How do I stay grounded and centered and yet detached in a way to where I'm not getting so caught up in everyone else's drama and the way the world is constantly changing. So that teaching of detachment is a spiritual teaching. right? So that absolutely can be woven into the fabric of our somatic experience, because what's it like, what's the opposite of that? We're always working with polarities, right? Human beings, our experience is a dualistic experience until we're dropped into that one, right? Until we're in absolute with that one source. So if I start to lean into the teachings of detachment, well, what is an opposite of detachment?
Yeah, attachment.
Attachment.
Or getting caught up, right? That's what I'm
Okay, so watch what your fingers just did, right? Your fingers just did this. So the opposite. Now we can go into what is this? This is cling, holding on to, control, right?
Control, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So all of these things, right? And so in the 360, part of what we're highlighting are these opposites.
The polarity.
The polarities, right? Yeah. This is why we fight with ourselves all the time. It's like, there's this part of me and there's that part of me. There's a part of me that wants that cheesecake, and there's a part of me that, wants to feel good in my body tomorrow, And I'm always making these choices. We're always making these choices, right? Yeah. So in that way, we can, people that are attuned in that way, so we can go into an experience tonight. So let's say that I work with that. I'm going to start with a very physical experience, and some of those teachings are going to be dropped in. And depending on what it is that each individual is working with in their own life, they're going to gravitate towards that way or towards that way or towards this way. So there's still so much openness in what it is that an individual might take home with them.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I'm often surprised, like when I really drop into the teaching realm, part of my own ritual is to, as much as possible, get my own personal stuff out of the way so that I can really hold space for the whole. And okay, this might sound a little woo-woo, but there's a certain point where if I'm really dropped into the field, I'm not really operating from the personality of Amber anymore. I'm more attuned to the whole. And so sometimes what's coming out of my mouth, I won't even remember. So some folks might come after, wow, that thing that you said really resonated. I'm like, did I say that?
Was that me?
Right. But usually what people will reflect that they're taking away is very nuanced. It's very individualistic. Yeah. And so in a way, part of what I'm aiming to hold space for is the largest, it's the macro and the micro. There again comes the polarity. Yeah. So we're paying attention, let's say, to the micro in the way that my wrists are moving, right? But at the same time, I might be cueing them to see the whole space. Yeah. And so there again, someone might walk away with a very somatic experience. Someone else might have gotten a huge download in their journey of a whole healing that happened just because of their own practice and being in the space of the community, right? And so part of what in a session that I lead, I don't want to say always because, but usually there's a moment where each individual makes their own intention. For some people, that intention might be, okay, I feel really out of water here. I'm going to challenge myself to stay in this room for the next 2 hours.
To just stay the whole time.
To just stay.
Yeah, I love
that. That might be, because for some people that haven't experienced this before, again, just to cross that threshold, just to show up is a huge challenge. And I applaud that challenge. It's
really
like, those things of let's, try anything on once. Maybe not anything and everything, but, a lot of things. Okay, I'm curious about that. I'm going to go at least sniff that out and try it on once. And if you leave with something that was valuable, I'd say try it on twice. Yeah. Yeah. And everybody's going to walk away with something different.
True. I love that.
Yeah. 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 Did I answer your question? I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. There's a lot there. I think for me, when I hear the word somatic now, I really hear wholeness, that our body contains everything in some sense. Yeah. And it's not like thoughts are over here and our body's over here. It's like our thoughts actually live in our body, and our nervous system is decentralized. It fills our entire soma, our entire body. Yeah. So different emotions, different thoughts, or like ideas, or it's all connected. It's all here.
It's all connected.
But for some reason, and we could talk about this for hours probably, but coming back to the body is such a doorway for so many of us because our culture is pretty disembodied, generally speaking.
Absolutely.
So we need that. It's the medicine we need.
Absolutely. Many folks, and we know this happened a lot during the height of the pandemic. So many people in front of their computers all the time.
Yeah.
Well, that takes a toll. I mean, my eyesight is now worse than it was a year ago, in part, even with blue blocker and all that, the amount of screen time. And so us really understanding what it is that we're doing by sitting in front of the computer 8, 9, 10 hours a day is really important. I mean, people get carpal tunnel in their wrists. We start to, slouch, all of these things. The body is like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And it holds memory.
Yeah.
So part, not to go too far down this road, but when we start to move the body in this way, part of what each person is doing, I'm not giving you steps. That's not what's happening here. We're inviting in different parts of the body. We're inviting the spine to move. So when the spine starts moving, the heart starts moving, right? Yeah. So if I've stuffed down, tears or a moment in my heart, it has a huge potentiality to start moving in the dance. Same thing in the muscle. When we experience trauma, we can have a moment where, let's say that trauma, for instance, goes right behind the right shoulder. Mm-hmm. And then we start to move in this kind of way, and that muscle starts to soften and have some flow go into it, and energy starts to move around it. And so sometimes what can happen is those places where we've stuffed trauma has an opportunity now to move, to get out. And so, when you go into a class, you might sometimes see people, having tears or crying. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing. That is us getting well. That is us, remembering all the different parts of ourselves that we've fractaled ourselves or pushed down or put it over there. It's like, no, we are coming back into wholeness. Yeah. And sometimes what that looks like is crying or all of a sudden experiencing rage come through. And whoa, why are my hands in fists? Why are my jaw clenched? Why am I doing like I'm walking around like this? Okay, I don't want to walk around like that anymore, because part of what's happening whenever we're holding tension in the body and we're walking around like that, we're actually cutting off our own flow of energy. Like right now, even though we're really paying attention to it, we're sitting upon the earth right now that has its own energy coming through it. And so what we're learning how to do is where we can effort less, where we can invite in more relaxation. Because when we break it down, tension held in the body is actually the past being held in your body. And so if we can, flip that, here we go with the polarity again. If we can flip that and turn it on its head, I can say, an intention for my dance practice tonight, for my movement practice, is to move the tension out of my body so that I can come into a greater state of presence.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we said about the tension is holding the past.
Yeah.
And I think that there's like a tremendous intelligence in our body that will put something on hold for a little bit because we can't process it or deal with it right now. Right. But of course, the problem is if you do that for a few years, you're a mess. And we need spaces and tools and abilities to let it move through us.
And safe communities to do that in, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we really aim to create in the 360 is a container that's held well enough, strong enough, to where folks that are coming in and having an emotional experience feel safe to do that there. And there's a whole learning curve in that as well.
So much healing in that. To just get to a point of feeling safe in community is a huge thing for a lot of people. Yeah.
Right. Or like, oh my gosh, I cried. Now I feel shame. Right. And that's part of why we keep showing up. It's like, okay, you know how there's certain things that we can get at. There's certain things we can only get at either in partnership and relationship to another or as part of a community. I mean, we can do all kinds of work and live in our own house, and never leave the house and think that we're doing, I got it. And then we go home to our family and like, oh my God, I don't have it, right?
Or you get on the road and have a road rage and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Right. So we actually need community and relationships to help us get at the life lessons, or, if we're into our own evolution and growth, there's certain things that we can only truly see where we are at if there's someone there
The mirror.
to be the mirror.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you got it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a wonderful conversation, and we're at the time.
Is it already an hour?
Yeah, it's been an hour.
I love that. It's like,
It's fast.
boom, we could be here for hours, huh?
Yeah,
That was
feels
an
like it.
hour. Amazing. Wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hanging with us for a whole hour. That's exciting.
Any last words for us? I know you have the retreat in January in Costa Rica.
Yeah. We have the retreat in Costa Rica in January. We're about to hold our first apprenticeship for those that have really been steeped in the practice. That begins in March. So lots of new things coming through for the 360. But, as far as like a closing message to folks, I would say regardless of whatever kind of modality that you choose, whether it's walking or surfing, or it's to keep the body moving, right? Is to keep energy moving, because when we just sit and we stay in our homes and we become stagnant. So whatever kind of physical practice that you choose, it's just so important to who we are, because we are physical beings.
Yeah.
That is part of our equation here on this planet. So we want to stay in the body and keep practicing being in the body, and listening to our beautiful hearts and what those beautiful hearts have to say, and all of that. So let's keep moving. That's I think the thing. Movement.
Keep moving.
Keep moving. Keep on moving. Well, thanks. It's been a pleasure to be here with you again, Julian.
Thank you so much for listening. If you have found value in this podcast, if you appreciate it, there are many ways you can help support the show. You can make a donation at patreon.com. You can also just share it for free with your friends and followers on social media or in an email. Let someone know about it. That's a great way to support the podcast. You can also leave us a review if you listen on Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can hit the subscribe button. You can hit that like button. Check out our website, astateofmindpodcast.com. More about me and my work at astateofmindcounseling.org. Thank you so much, and I will see you here next time.